Hello, and a very warm welcome to Passions Live. And yes, we are live on LinkedIn, on the Passions Facebook page, and actually the Passions YouTube page. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Ray Jones. So without further ado, I'll just play the intro, give people time to come into the live stream, and then we'll have a chat with Ray. Okay, so a very warm welcome to Passions and a very warm welcome to Ray Jones. And Ray, just because it's a live stream, I think you deserve this. There you go, mate. You see? Right. Okay. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Ray Jones from, as you can see, from Talentbanq. Got lots to talk about, lots to chat about. So let's start from the very beginning, Ray, I guess. Not kind of when you were born. We won't go that far back. But let's start with what exactly is your passion?
Yeah. I think years ago when I wrote my biog on LinkedIn, I actually said that my passions at the time were fringe theatre, live music, late nights, and my family. So I had 4 passions. I think that's still the case with me. It's just that live music seems to have become bigger within that list.
Brilliant. I noticed that late nights became before family, or was that just by accident?
I don't know. It's great. I've now got I've got a very understanding wife that allows me to actually run mini festivals at my home, and they don't finish early, I can assure you. And I've got 2 sons, 25 and 19, and we all have managed to socialise quite well as a family. So the late night tradition definitely, lives on.
Brilliant. Okay, well, look, we'll talk about Talentbanq, and obviously it would be crazy not to talk about it in context of COVID as well, because we're doing this particular interview in the kind of towards the end of the second lockdown. I don't know about you, I'm completely confused and mixed up as to what the hell lockdown we're in, especially being up in Manchester, where I feel like we've been in lockdown since about 1863, to be honest. So tell me about Talentbanq then, because it sounds like a great concept.
Yeah, Talentbanq. Well, we're in our 3rd year at the moment, and the idea of the business was to discover, nurture, and promote the best of unsigned talent, people that are not supported by major funding or record labels. There's quite a few people that are out there saying that they're seeking to discover great talent, and a lot of that you see on the TV, you know, Britain's Got Talent and X Factor and all that sort of stuff. But actually our concept, if you like, was to find people that want to do the hard yards, not the people that are seeking the TV fame routes, the people that want to get out and play the small clubs, mostly around London. That's where we're based. And so London is a magnet. So whilst we are operating in London, actually artists from around the country and around the world come to London to hone their craft. So yeah, that was the idea of the business, and we set out to try to get paid work for artists performing their own original music. And we described that task even to our investors as like going up Annapurna by its hardest face. Yeah, this was not an easy gig.
Yeah.
So,
no, I mean,
over the course of time, and I will say what was quite remarkable, when we launched the business, we did a gig to announce to the world that we were here. And we did it in a 620 cap venue in London. And, we thought, well, look, if we fill that to halfway, it's going to feel good. It's going to feel really good. We did a little VIP reception beforehand for our investors and supporters, because some people had been mad enough to, get involved. And what happened on the night was that about 20 minutes after we started our evening, we had to put sold out boards out on the street. I mean, we started with a bang. So,
Amazing. Okay, so I've got to ask you then, obviously, because this channel is about passions, but it's also about business and making a living from passions. So it kind of treads those different boards of achievement, and as well as the concept of passions. So I have to ask you, what was your marketing genius that allowed you to achieve that?
Well, it's interesting that your channel's called Passion, because I think in the very early stages, it may have been passion and enthusiasm and just literally spreading the word. The thing about any business, it does need to have structure, and it needs to have purpose, and people need to be able to understand what you're setting out to achieve. So what happened for me in the very early stages of Talentbanq is that I had actually been working at Time Out, the media company, magazines, websites, and I'd actually been running Time Out Live. So I was involved in bringing the brand to life, mostly for millennials, actually. My social media feed was full of people about 1/3 of my age. I was most like,
you've got to be careful on that kind of thing,
Yeah, listen, most of it was legal. But anyway, so I did have quite a bit of experience in live events, and I did have a little bit of a reputation and a following. But when I started the business, and I should say when we started the business, I have two co-founders. One, a gentleman called Pablo Ettinger, who is actually one of the founders of the Cafe Nero coffee shop chain. And
right,
yeah. And Cafe Nero did a huge amount for independent music and independent artists. When you go in to have a coffee, much of what you hear played is actually new music. So people Shazam it, the artists get known, they sponsor festival stages. Nero is just a very cool brand when it comes to supporting independent music. The second co-founder was a gentleman, Lord Mervyn Davis. So Mervyn sits in the House of Lords. He is ex-chairman of Standard Chartered Bank worldwide, really knows his way around the finance world, but again, a huge passion, not only for independent music and independent artists, but a bit of a social conscience. He's really into helping the little guy. So, the three of us, in by the way, a half-hour conversation to shake hands on it and start a business. I mean, I'd love to tell you about a business plan and a cash flow forecast and all that good stuff, but no, actually, we had an idea, shook hands on it, said, let's make it happen. And about a month later, we had a breakfast meeting to work out how on earth we were going to actually achieve the idea. But, you know, I had two very solid co-founders. And so in that very early stages, we could send out a positive message that three guys who it looks like we know what we're talking about, we're going to get into this sector of the business. And I think that helped our early flush of success, if you like.
I think that's a really good point, because the best businesses that I've seen over the years usually do involve the original, maybe one person having the very original idea, but they're not greedy. They're prepared to share it with others to get it to a greater, wider place, rather than it's all mine, it's my idea, I'm going to do it all on my own. I think you're a great example where you kind of thought, well, look, we'll share it, but we'll get there a lot quicker and it'll be more fun too, of course.
I think I'm going to be really honest with you, because it was actually Mervyn Davis. He was willing pretty well to fund the startup of the business. But at the meeting that we had about a month after the idea was born, he actually said, look, guys, how about the three of us invest in this idea? Let's run it for a year. Let's make sure that it's viable. Let's make sure we haven't created, a monster. And then after 11 months, when we had actually started to really understand the business and the direction of travel, then we went out to invite investors in, which, looking back on it now, that was a really good policy. And so, yes, but the three founders, we've got our shares in the business. We're equal shareholders, if you like. We brought in investors, but they are all active, not passive investors. So we said to them, your money is going to be hugely valuable, but any door you can open for us, please do. And I mean, we have had just incredible inputs from our investors.
Sounds great fun, to be honest, as much as anything else.
Oh, shall I give you an example of that?
Please do.
One of our investors is the founder and chair of the Hotel Chocolat chain. And Angus is just a great lover of music. And what I didn't know is that in Covent Garden in London, underneath Hotel Chocolat, they had a little place called the Cocoa Vaults. And he said one evening, Ray, as it happens, his son Fergus is a very able musician, really great guy. And he said, Ray, wouldn't it be great if perhaps I give you access to our venue for the night? It'd be great to put Fergus on, family member. Why not? No conflict there. And maybe you could bring down one or two Talentbanq artists, and we'll have a night of independent music in Covent Garden. Well, I'm sorry. What a great location. The place was just so cool. And to enter through a chocolate shop, go down a little spiral staircase, my pet subject, if ever I get onto Mastermind, will be the basements of Soho. So here we were discovering a new one. And we had the tiniest stage. And on that night, yes, we did put on Angus's son, Fergus. We put on an artist in the middle, if you like, called Joe Slater. But to finish the night off, we put on a 6-piece band that tore a hole in Covent Garden. I mean, so yeah, let's be honest about it. There is an element of fun involved. If you get it right, it sort of works for everybody. And by the way, in the room that night, we had some good people, including one of the top record producers in the UK. So yeah, the whole thing worked.
Oh, I'm fascinated to ask you actually about what you might call the state of the music industry. I mean, to be honest, we could probably do an hour just on this particular subject, because there's a lot of debate, isn't there, around the state of the music industry. If we just leave the COVID scenario just for a minute, we'll come back to that. But in terms of free music, YouTube, a million different YouTube channels, a million different free opportunities. Big business, music, the big business, the likes of the X Factors and those kind of shows and everything. Has there been an upturn or a big demand or a bigger demand nowadays for independent music? I'm thinking of the word like more authentic, perhaps more raw.
Yeah, authenticity is a great word in this area, but what you're addressing there is the way the whole infrastructure changed with the digital revolution. When Napster and all the guerrilla guys came in and found that actually what is music? It's just, it's a series of binary arrangements, and they could stream it for free. And it took a while for the music industry itself to get on top of that. And now, of course, because the industry has got on top of it, there are some very big players, and the guys at the bottom find it very hard. Unless you've got a big budget, how on earth do you get recognized? Because nowadays, which is very liberating, but if you and I, Phil, wanted to release a record, we could record it now and we could release it at the end of today. None of the old-fashioned processes. We wouldn't have to go necessarily into a recording studio. We wouldn't have to get it mixed. We wouldn't have to get it mastered. We can just get it out there. So there's a lot of noise. It's very hard to get recognized. And in the old days, musicians would make their money by touring, live performance, merchandise, selling stuff, whether it's vinyls or CDs or T-shirts or hoodies or whatever. And then they might get a sync with films or a TV program. Nowadays, it's got harder and harder because the things that you physically used to be able to sell, people, vinyls and CDs and cassettes, there's an amount of people that are out there that still feel it's trendy to have those things. But the honest truth is the next generation have left all that behind. So it has become tougher to earn a living. And then, of course, that whole challenge has been amplified by what's happened most recently. So it was tough anyway, and now it's got really tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It fascinates me actually because I've got my own kind of story, which I won't bore everybody with. But a guy asked me would I help him to try and make it through, cut through the noise, as it were. And this is going back probably about 15, 18 years ago. And it was really first class music, but boy, was it a slog. There's a story there actually that it was around when the Commonwealth Games were on up here in Manchester. And he got very, very close to being able to perform at the Commonwealth Games, which would have, it's one of those those forks in the road.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is it. He's going to actually make it. And I might actually be seen as the guy that helped him get there. And then there was all sorts of political conversations about he was an unknown and there were various well-known artists due to perform. And it all got very political, which I won't go into because I might get sued. But apart from that, it was definitely, it was, I suppose it's back to the old days of send out a tape.
Yeah.
To A&R,
It's very, this is before the pandemic, but I made a phone call to a venue because I had found a red hot artist that I knew would set this venue on fire. she and the place would just be perfection together. A young girl, Georgia and the Vintage Youth is the name of her band. 22 or 23-year-old from Essex, real Amy Winehouse style about her, but playing her own music, but cool. Anyway, so I rang up this venue and I said, look, I think, you know, we'd like to hire the venue, we'd like to put this girl on. And the person I was speaking to said, oh, can you tell me about all of her social media engagement? Please tell me how many Instagram followers she's got, how many Facebook followers, how many Spotify streams does she have, how many Spotify followers does she have? And I said to the girl at the other end of the phone, who I'm sure was lovely, I said, look, don't worry. I said, that's not how we judge the people we work with. I'm sorry that you do, because you know what? All of that is fake currency. It's like, however many people you've got following you on social media has nothing to do with what you will do live on stage. Anyway, we just went up the road to another venue, sold it out, and I invited that person to join us on the night.
What a great story. And you know, that must be music, if you pardon the pun, to the ears of people watching this who are, because it does seem to be that, I mean, it's so easy for an old guy like me to be saying it, but I think it's true, is that it's all about the numbers of likes and egos around the number of likes. And of course, it's not really about that when it comes down to it, is it? It's almost just become almost like a trend.
Yeah. And the thing is, if used properly, it's a very useful tool, because it does allow one-on-one engagement between the artist and their fan base. But to judge somebody only on that criteria is not the right way to go. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Of course.
In this day and age, you really do need to have a presence on all of those channels and in all of those places. But it's just not the be-all and end-all.
Yeah, it's context, isn't it? I suppose at the end of the day. Yeah. Okay. So obviously this channel is called Passions. So would you say that throughout your career you've always had or most of the time, have you always had a passion for what work you've been doing, or what sort of percentages, and how important is it been, Ray, to have that passion in order to keep yourself motivated and stimulated?
Okay, so if I take it back, early career, my nickname, and I can't shake it off, and I don't want to necessarily shake it off, my nickname is Mr. London. And how I picked up that nickname is that when I was a younger man, I actually started in the hotel business, and I started as a concierge, Mr. Fix-It. So I was that guy welcoming you into the hotel, and whatever you wanted, again, provided it was legal, I would seek to accommodate your wishes. And in the hotels I worked in, I found that the things that people most wanted was great restaurants and entertainment, whether it was theatre, whether it was art galleries and exhibitions, you know, the more cultured stuff.
Yeah.
But of course, in the evening, a lot of theatre. So I started to get to know all the theatre producers around London, and indeed the people retailing on their behalf, and really built up quite a reputation for being able to get people pretty well whatever they wanted. And this was back when, you know, Phantom of the Opera, Cats, Les Miserables, Miss Saigon, Starlight Express, the Andrew Lloyd Webber and Cameron Mackintosh juggernauts had arrived into London. What happened for me during that period is not only did I fall in love with live theatre, but actually I started personally going to an awful lot of live music. As a youngster, I'd already sort of started that. I lived in London. I could jump on the Piccadilly line. My mum and dad probably didn't really understand where I was going, but back then, you know, the Jam and the Stranglers and Sham 69 and Eddie and the Hot Rods and Dr. Feelgood and the Sex Pistols and all that craziness was going on in London. and by the way, I used to have hair back then.
Yeah, me too, mate.
And you guys up in Manchester were having your own fun, But
yeah, that's right.
I was out there absorbing all that as a kid. So yes, during my early career, I really started getting into the whole entertainment scene around London, and that word passion. When you're a concierge, there's a motto: service through friendship. So when a client comes up to you, you still have to be professionally distanced, but you genuinely try to deliver for them as though they were a friend. Like if you've been a good concierge. I know there's this whole thing about you turn them upside down, you shake them and see how much money comes out. Not what it's about. So yeah, I had that passion right from the start. And if you wish, I'll tell you about how I started my first business, which is a little bit bonkers, but it was born out of that passion.
Yeah, we like bonkers on this channel, Ray. So off you go. Okay,
well, there I am, head concierge in a wonderful hotel, the Mountbatten Hotel in Covent Garden. I was right in Theatreland. I had Les Miserables at the Palace Theatre on the doorstep. I had the whole of Shaftesbury Avenue out the door within 3 minutes. I had found my peach base. And gosh, during that time, I got to know an awful lot of the clients that were in the hotel, one of them very well. And one day he came up to me and said that he had an office in Piccadilly Circus that was on a controlled rent. He was moving out. He was going to start another business and he was moving into another address in Soho. And did I want his office? So I said to him, yeah, I do. I didn't have a business idea. I just said, yeah, I want it. So I went to the man who was my boss, the general manager of the Mountbatten Hotel, a great guy. And I said to him, I've been offered the chance to take an office. I think I'm going to go and start my own business. And he said, all right, Ray, off you go. He sort of joked with me that I've been running my own business from his front desk in the hotel anyway. So what's the difference? And he said, you go and open your own business. And he said, if for any reason it doesn't work out, we're opening a new 5-star hotel in Leicester Square. You could come and join us there. So off you go. Anyway, I sat in an office one day. Now it's quite old fashioned, because you used to have to plug telephones into the wall. I had a director's desk, a filing cabinet and a phone. And I sort of sat there and thought, well, what am I going to do now? And then bit by bit, I started to do for people what I had done in the hotel. So if you were coming to London, I'll get your accommodation, I'll get your tickets, I can help you with your travel arrangements, whatever else you need to do in London, we'll do it for you. And I ran that business for 9 years through Thatcher boom and Gulf War bust. Yeah.
I think it's an interesting one, that, because the way I read that is it's almost like you made the commitment. So you had the office, so you almost had to do something with it. You almost forced yourself into having to do something because you've made the commitment. And I guess people around you knew that you got this office, I guess. So you're kind of, well, what are you going to do with it? And you had to prove something that you're going to do something worthwhile with it.
I just, it's very, look, the thing is, I do now, from time to time, I get asked to talk to MBA students and university students. I just did a session on Friday night for university students.
Yeah.
I don't actually advise anyone to do what I did. It was a moment of lunacy. I'm glad I did it. It set me up as an independent, and I've never looked back. And by the way, that whole thing about being an entrepreneur, gosh, I said that I went through Thatcher boom and Gulf War bust. I mean,
yeah.
We opened an office in New York. We were providing the services that we provided in London in North America to people traveling over to London. And believe me, when the Gulf War started, there was no one coming across the Atlantic. So this massive overhead, people not traveling. It was hard. I was carrying a lot of debt. I made that youthful mistake of everything was personally guaranteed at the bank. You know, I sat in my mum and dad's house one night. They were so proud of me for the business I'd set up. You know, I had amazing times. You know, I'd flown to New York to meet Sinatra's crew. We got involved with bringing Sinatra, Liza Minnelli and Sammy Davis Jr. to London. We did amazing things, but still, at the end of the day, it got really tough. Interest rates were running at what, 13 to 15%?
Oh, yeah, 15%, I think, at one point, yeah.
What a different world to now, right? We have our challenges now. People tend to forget the challenges you had back then. But I sat there with my mum and dad and said, look, I think the whole thing's about to go belly up. And they just said, well, don't worry, Ray, if it does, come home. We know you'll bounce, you'll start again. It was tough, man. It was really tough. And I will be honest with you, I had my accountant staying at my house, my bookkeeper, I should say, staying at my house. And I had an idea at about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I went and knocked on the bedroom door where he was sleeping. He must have thought, wow, Jonesy's gone mad. And I explained my idea to him. And fortunately, we managed to save the business. And eventually the business was bought, and I went on to a much bigger business doing the same thing, but if you like, financed and protected within a big PLC environment. So luckily, yeah, but you know, that whole thing about being an entrepreneur, taking the risk, and
you've got to have big, what is it they say, big kahunas. And I usually say to clients actually who are thinking about starting businesses, and you know, I'll say to them, if you love the wages fairy, you need to think very carefully about whether you're even going to think about doing it. And they do say, don't they, that you know, quite often people who are entrepreneurial, that they are maybe one step from crazy. And the resilience levels required is unbelievable, which obviously leads me very nicely onto where we're at now. I mean, we're recording this in November in 2020, and we've got the lockdown, second lockdown going on, or probably for us as in Manchester, it's about the 5th or something. I've lost count of that. So I suppose I've actually had a question here from, funnily enough, from Caroline, which is a broader question, which I'll ask because Caroline's asked it. And she's basically said, what sort of impact has the current COVID situation had on the business?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Caroline. Good question. So November the 17th, St. Patrick's night, we did 6 big parties across London. March the 18th, we had to cancel about 500 live performances. And so that March the 17th, March the 18th, the world changed dramatically, significantly for the worst in our business overnight. And let's face it, it was the same for a lot of people in this country. Everybody went into that enforced government, enforced lockdown. The industries that got hit hardest actually were the hospitality industries, and of course, music venues. The infrastructure that we work within really had a tough time. Everybody had to close. People were working on wafer thin margins anyway, and fragile businesses actually looked like they would just collapse. I think we all know what's happened economically, you know, and I have to be fair about this. I think the government, through giving money to the Arts Council to protect grassroots music venues, and by introducing the furlough scheme, have managed to at least keep the infrastructure in place, even though it's not necessarily open or operating.
Interesting.
So now, so for us, we had to go into survival mode. Now, between the lockdowns, in August and September, we were straight back up. We were out doing little outside mini festivals. We managed to get back into the swing of things quite quickly, not to the scale that we were doing in the past. And it wasn't really enough to pay all the wages, but it at least allowed us to get back out there, remind people what live music looked and felt like. But, what's happening at the moment, it's definitely become a marathon. It's, we know that things aren't really going to start recovering until March, April of next year. So we are having to be very resilient. We've had to take as much overhead as we can out of the business. In fact, Phil, if you know where the wages fairy is, could you please send her to my house? Because, we really had to make, we've had to make some sacrifices to get through. And for musicians and technicians and all of the people that work in the industry, it's been really hard. A lot of them, creatives, they feed on getting out on stage and having interaction with live audiences. Live streams, which everybody found a bit of a novelty in the beginning, but there's a high degree of fatigue starting to come in even about that. A live stream does not deliver to an artist what they really crave for. So some musicians have taken to it quite well. Others have gone pretty well into mental lockdown, which has been hard. And they have fallen between some of the funding cracks. So a lot of them have had to go on to social just to get some income. So, look, I can't put a gloss on it. It's been hard, but I am a born optimist. You won't get that out of me. And I think what is happening is that there are innovators in the background starting to look at what's going to happen next. And even we're involved in some quite interesting projects for 2021. And you will never, ever crush the music business. Creative people don't retrain. That's one thing that the government got wrong. You can't retrain a musician or a ballerina. They might go off like a footballer and have something else that they might train into, which would be a nice safety net for them for now or the future. But come on, this is called passion. They have a passion for doing what they do live. And it's a bit like when the Sex Pistols were living on Denmark Street, they didn't need government permission or help to go and play their first gig down at St. Martin's College and break the whole room up. No, you can't crush that passion. So I do believe that when it becomes safe to do so, the music business will bounce back.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and I think it's very true and very relevant to what we're talking about today and about this channel. It is very much about passion, and and it is said, isn't it, that the vast majority, I think you alluded to this at the start actually, Ray, that probably if like you said, they've got to pay the bills, but at the end of the day, a lot of them would do it for free if they could.
Yeah, and isn't that a great and unfortunately a great misunderstanding, because so many people call me and say, oh, we're doing this or we're doing that, and we love live music and we're going to have an audience, and your artists will be able to build their fan base if they come along and play for free. And it's like, no, actually, you know what? They got to put fuel in the car. They've done 50,000 hours of training to be able to play that instrument the way that they play it. Come on, let's be fair. Let's give them a fair reward for getting up and playing. And that actually is part of our role, persuading people that there's real value in getting a great musician to come along and play for you.
Are they quite shocked when you say that? Are they expecting you to push back, or are they expecting you to welcome them with open arms?
Look, I don't know. I don't know what the person on the other end of the phone is actually experiencing. I'll be honest with you. Once you've had that conversation, and I think being part of Talentbank, if you like, is an endorsement mark. We have seen our musicians, the people on our roster are handpicked. You can't buy your way in. We know they can deliver a great show. And, it may well be that if you want to get a kid round the corner who's just doing open mics and they're a bit of a karaoke standard, if that's what you want in your place, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you want something that's a little bit more high class, I mean, wow, last year, just to give an example, and this was St. Patrick's night, this guy called us up and he was doing something for a charity. And he said, look, Ray, basically, we want to get people in here from noon. They're going to have like a lunch, then they're going to have some speeches, then they're going to have some cocktails. What do you think we could do? And I said to him, well, that sounds like a day that's going to build. So, I won't talk you through all the processes because I think in the beginning he wanted one artist, right? We ended up providing a Celtic harpist to play very gentle music while they had a pre-lunch sort of cocktail. Over lunch, we had another artist that once they'd done the speeches, this guy got up and sang a couple of real sort of, get the tempo up. And then when they broke from dinner or from lunch, we started with just a 3-piece little Celtic band in the corner. So it felt like going into a pub in Dublin. Yeah, and there's just these guys playing in the corner. But what happened is we got more to join them. So by the end of the evening, there was 6 of them on stage. And you know what, Phil? Nobody went home. Nobody went home. They had a fantastic day. We kept those people in that guy's bar. And, come on. That's that phrase, win-win. It worked for everyone. The people that came had a great day. They stayed drinking in his bar. They all experienced great music. And the artists, bless them, all got paid.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. And I have to say that this obviously we'll all have to see what happens with the vaccine, but it's looking promising. And maybe hopefully, certainly by maybe summer next year, we can look back on 2020 as that was an interesting year, wasn't it? And everybody can go back to having those experiences again. Ray, I'm going to run out of time, but absolutely fantastic. Loving that. And you know what? Your passion is just oozing out of you on every level. It's absolutely wonderful and fantastic. So how do people find out more about Talentbank then? I guess you've got a website, have you?
Yeah. Yes, Talentbank. It's got a Q at the end, talentbanq.com. Yeah, just go onto the website. We're on social media at Talentbank. We're pretty busy. We're out there in all the digital channels. And look, the great thing is we will get hopefully back to being prolific live gig promoters. And if any audience members today come along to any of our gigs and see me there, I'm quite often the compere up on stage, come up and say hello. That's what it's all about. Let's discover it together.
Bit of a shrinking violet, Ray, are you?
I'm very shy. Don't ever give me a microphone. Yeah.
Wonderful. Right. Thanks ever so much, mate. Really appreciate it. I know time's precious, especially in these times, and really great. And hopefully I'll get to meet you in the real world at some point in the not too distant future. So thanks for joining me on Passions, and I'll catch you again very soon, sir.
Cheers, Phil.
Thanks, Ray. Bye-bye now.